A condom stretched over a rifle barrel looks like a punchline. It stays a joke until you learn a single grain of sand can burst steel, ruin a weapon, and cost a life. In Vietnam, river crossings fouled weapons within seconds. In the Gulf, British gunners improvised barriers against storms that stripped rifles bare. This is not about jokes or superstitions. Physics here is unforgiving, and survival is measured in fractions of a second. Why would special forces trust something so out of place when getting it wrong means catastrophe? The real answer begins where routine ends and the environment turns lethal. Every rifle is, at its core, a pressure vessel, an engineered tube where the laws of physics are absolute. When a soldier pulls the trigger, burning powder releases a shockwave of gas that slams a bullet forward at nearly 3,000 feet per second. The inside of that barrel is designed to be perfectly clear. Even the smallest obstruction, a clump of mud or a grain of sand, can disrupt that balance instantly. Gas pressure, which normally peaks around 50,000 pounds per square inch in a 5.56 millimeter rifle, has nowhere to go if the path is blocked. Instead of launching the bullet, the pressure can double or triple in a split second, turning the barrel into a metal grenade. Steel splits, muzzles peel open, and fragments can injure or kill the shooter and anyone nearby. There is no warning. A dark muzzle hides debris, especially in rain at night or during the chaos of combat. Inspection is not always possible, and a missed speck of grit can destroy a weapon and end a life. Armorers and ordnance experts agree. Prevention is the only safe answer. That is why, in the field, soldiers look for barriers that keep debris out but disappear the moment a shot is fired. The risk is not theoretical. It is a consequence of physics that does not forgive mistakes, no matter how small. Jungle patrols in Vietnam pushed rifles and their owners to the limit. The air hung heavy with humidity, and every step sank into mud that clung to boots and gear. When the monsoon rains hit, visibility fell to nothing, and the ground turned to soup. Soldiers moved single file through tangled brush, sweat mixing with rain until everything was slick. Going prone meant pressing the muzzle into muck, risking a plug of mud or a crawling insect finding its way into the barrel. River crossings brought new hazards. Water rose to chest level. Rifles were held high, but never high enough to guarantee a clean bore. Veteran accounts describe exhaustion so deep that checking a barrel before a firefight was a luxury, not a routine. One Vietnam infantryman remembered slogging through a flooded rice paddy, mud splashing with every step, his M16's muzzle vanishing under the surface more than once before the patrol reached dry ground. In those moments, a simple latex barrier could mean the difference between a rifle that fired and one that blew apart. The jungle did not care about careful maintenance or perfect drills. It punished any opening, any slip, with instant failure. For soldiers, keeping the muzzle sealed was not a quirky habit. It was a survival tactic learned the hard way, under fire, in places where stopping to clean a weapon was never an option. Desert operations bring a different kind of threat. Fine dust hangs in the air, carried by wind, vehicle convoys, and the thunder of helicopter rotors. Each landing sends a blast of grit swirling across the ground, forcing its way into every exposed surface. A rifle muzzle, left unprotected, becomes a funnel for sand. Tiny particles cling to oil and sweat, and they work their way deep inside the barrel. Soldiers in the Gulf War learned this lesson fast. British sailors on the HMS Fort Grange stretched condoms over the barrels of their 7.62 millimeter machine guns and even the larger 20 millimeter Oerlikons, sealing out the abrasive desert sand that threatened to jam or damage their weapons. In these conditions, a single grain of sand can scratch rifling, or worse, create a partial blockage. The risk is not limited to ground troops. Anti-aircraft crews improvised covers for their guns, knowing that a moment's inattention could mean a weapon out of action when it was needed most. Sandstorms can roll in without warning, turning the air itself into a hazard. Even after a storm passes, dust lingers, settling on every surface and creeping into every gap. Tape might peel away, and hard plugs are too risky. What is needed is a barrier that seals instantly, stays put, and vanishes the moment a shot is fired. Prevention is not just about keeping the rifle clean, it is about keeping it alive. Saltwater hits harder than most people realize. During a surf landing, special operations teams have less than a minute to get from water to combat ready on the beach. There is no pause for maintenance. Salt spray coats everything: rifles, optics, even the inside of magazines if gear is not sealed tight. Wet sand clings to every surface, and the instant a muzzle touches the ground, it can pack tight enough to block a shot. Operators train for this kind of transition. One moment you are chest deep in waves, the next you are sprinting through soft sand, eyes scanning for threats. There is no time to shake out a barrel or check for debris. A retired Special Forces operator described surf insertions as a race against the clock. He remembered saltwater fouling metal in hours, not days, and how a single grain of sand could jam a weapon just as the first shots broke out. In these conditions, a barrier over the muzzle is not just smart, it is non-negotiable. It keeps out the water, the grit, and the salt that can turn a rifle into dead weight before the fight even starts. When every second counts, the simplest protection is the one you can trust to work, even when you cannot see it. Latex condoms solve a problem that tape, rags, and plugs never could. The material is engineered for stretch, less than 1/10 of a millimeter thick, but able to expand and snap back without tearing. That elasticity lets it form a tight seal over the muzzle, blocking out water, sand, and mud while adding almost no bulk or weight. Each condom comes individually packaged and sterile until opened, so it is clean when you need it most. Unlike tape, there is no sticky residue to attract dust or gum up the barrel. Unlike plugs or cloth, there is no risk of a forgotten obstruction turning deadly. Soldiers quickly learned that unlubricated condoms work best in the field. Lubricant designed for comfort becomes a magnet for grit and makes the barrier harder to handle with wet or gloved hands. The latex stays flexible in heat, cold, or rain, and it is cheap enough to be replaced after every patrol. In a world where every ounce counts, a 1-gram barrier that guards against catastrophic failure is a rare combination of practicality and precision. That is why, when lives depend on a single shot, the simplest material science wins. When you see a condom stretched over a rifle muzzle, a question lingers. What happens when the trigger is pulled? The answer is simple to capture in a controlled armorer's workshop. The rifle is loaded, aimed safely downrange, and fired in slow motion. In less than 10 milliseconds, the thin latex membrane ruptures and vanishes. The tear is instant, torn apart by a shockwave of gas and a bullet moving at nearly 3,000 feet per second. There is no hesitation, no deflection, and no residue left behind. The bullet's path stays true. The pressure curve inside the barrel remains within safe limits, and the weapon cycles as designed. This is not luck or wishful thinking. It is physics meeting material science. Latex is engineered to fail instantly under high pressure, never acting as a solid plug. Armorers and ordnance experts have tested this principle for decades, confirming that a condom over the muzzle is a disposable barrier, not a hazard. The real danger comes from what gets past that barrier, not from the latex itself. For soldiers, that instant, flawless tear is the difference between a weapon that is ready and one that is ruined. On today's battlefield, the smallest detail can decide survival. As new threats and environments emerge, soldiers still rely on improvised solutions because physics does not care about appearances. Sometimes the line between ridicule and reality is just one thin barrier. What details are you overlooking? Let me know below.